Growing up, I would say I was not really raised in a Christian home. In general, my parents not being together, that was difficult. My brother and I were a little bit older, second, third grade, and that's when we started attending church. And it was great. They had a van that would come out to the house and get us. And that was amazing. That was a godsend that we had church in our lives at that time. I still remember it clear as day. We were in the van and we were driving back to the church, and they had asked, have you ever been saved? Had no idea what that meant. I still didn't really know what it meant completely when I said I wanted someone to pray for me so that I could be saved. Even though I prayed and I meant my prayer, I didn't fully surrender my life to Jesus. I had believed in God for as long as I could remember. I've craved that relationship, but I didn't really understand it. Getting married to Brandon, that was the first real promise that I had really ever made to God. I wanted God to be the foundation of that. And it was almost kind of like the blind leading the blind. I still hadn't given my heart to God. I still hadn't fully surrendered my life to Jesus. I was not reading my Bible. I had stopped going to church. Depression and anxiety is something that I struggled with my whole life, really. I can remember having dark thoughts and feelings, even as a child. When my third son was born, I think it was March of 2020 is when the world, so to speak, shut down. I really feared for the life that I was raising my children in. I felt really, really alone. I felt like no one understands what I'm going through. The hold that the enemy had on me, it was like a weight. It was like this heavy sandbag that I was carrying every single day. And it stole my hope and it stole my joy. And, it took me away from being present with my kids. And meanwhile, everybody in my life, nobody has any idea what's going on. My husband, who I live with every day, no one has any idea what's going on, the storm inside of my head. It's true what they say, that the most dangerous form of depression wears a smile. Honestly, I don't even know how I got up out of bed every day. The darkness had consumed me. I would drop my second son off at preschool, and I would go out to eat somewhere in town with my youngest son, Luke. I didn't even trust myself to go home because I was afraid if I went home that I was going to end my life. And I know it's so easy for people to say, how could a mother do that to her children? Or, how does someone get to that point? But when you are so consumed by that darkness and you feel like there is no hope, you'll do anything. For me, I had convinced myself at that point that the only rest was to pull the trigger. I remember one night specifically, I had had enough and I was gonna end my life. And from the top of the staircase to the bottom of the staircase, something changed. I just fell to my knees and I cried. And that was the first time I really, really cried out to Jesus aloud. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I said, I don't want to be in control anymore. I need you to take control. I need you to do this for me. I don't want to have these thoughts anymore. I know I shouldn't have these thoughts, And I begged him to save me in that moment. From then on, I would start waking up in the morning. Before the kids woke up, I had bought a devotional. I knew that I needed to be closer to God, not just conveniently closer to God when a holiday or when something great in my life was going on. It was like something just started stirring inside of me. Basically, I had this appetite, for more. And one morning I came to it, Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through 30, and it says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." It was like a light went off inside my head. I prayed again and I sobbed. I can't even tell you how many times I reread the verse. I read it over and over again. I prayed to God and I said, I get it now. I see now. And I can honestly say that was the moment that I was reborn. The biggest thing I could stress to people is it's not this one-time moment. If you love Jesus, it doesn't mean that things will be easy, but you've built a firm foundation. You have something to go on through life. Where in my darkness, I thought that pulling the trigger is what was going to give rest for my soul. The gospel, in turn, is what gave rest for my soul. You know, I would oftentimes be really down on myself that I didn't have this, awesome career, or those feelings of feeling very lost, like what is my purpose in life, basically. And I understand now that God gives all of us different gifts. He uses all of us in different ways. And I think one of the strongest gifts that He's given me is motherhood, bringing these children into the world and just teaching them to love Jesus. My name is Jesselyn, and I am here to make more and better disciples of Jesus.